The phone screamed at 20 past 1 in the morning, and I knew before I even opened my eyes that something was terribly wrong. Nobody rings at that hour with good news. I fumbled across the bedside table, knocking over a glass of water, and pressed the phone to my ear with a hand that was already shaking. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. My name is Nigel. I'm 64 years old, and I've lived in Christchurch my entire life. I fought through the earthquakes, rebuilt my home with my own hands, buried my wife 7 years ago. I thought I'd been through the worst life could throw at me. I was wrong. Mr. Beckett, this is Christchurch Hospital Emergency Department. Your daughter Charlotte has been admitted. She's being prepped for emergency surgery. The words came at me in pieces, like shrapnel. Charlotte. Emergency. Surgery. My daughter had rung me just that afternoon, chatting about Millie's school play and how little Jack had learned to ride his balance bike. She sounded tired, maybe, but she always sounded tired these days. I put it down to the kids, to the pace of life, to being a young mom. What happened? Is she all right? She's in the surgical theater now. The doctor will speak with you when you arrive. I'm sorry, I can't provide further details over the phone. I was dressed and in my truck within 4 minutes. The drive from my place in Ranjora down to the hospital takes about 40 minutes on a good day, but at 1:30 in the morning with empty roads and fear climbing up my throat, I made it in under 30. The whole way, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, and I kept seeing Charlotte as a little girl. 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the Christchurch show, laughing with her face turned up to the sun. I could always protect her then. A plaster on the knee, a cuddle, a bad dad joke. That was enough. I tried ringing Sean, my son-in-law, 3 times. Straight to voicemail each time. That wasn't unusual. Sean was a project manager for a construction firm, always working late, always with his phone on silent. But at 1:30 in the morning, with his wife in surgery? Something about it sat wrong in my gut. I pulled into the hospital car park and practically sprinted through the emergency entrance. The fluorescent lights hit me first, that horrible blue-white brightness that makes everything look worse than it is. Then the smell, antiseptic and floor cleaner and something underneath that smells like fear. Charlotte Radcliffe, I said to the woman at reception. My daughter. She's in surgery. She typed, slow as anything, and I had to stop myself from reaching over the counter. Surgical waiting area, level 3. Lifts are just down to your left. I didn't wait. I took the stairs because I couldn't stand still long enough for a lift. The waiting area was half empty. A couple of people dozed in plastic chairs, a television mounted on the wall playing muted late-night telly that nobody was watching. And there, in the far corner, sat Sean. He was leaning forward, elbows on his knees, head bowed. The picture of a worried husband. But when he looked up, his eyes were dry. Red-rimmed, but dry. Sean. I walked over and he stood. We shook hands, which felt strange. Too formal for the moment. What the hell happened? She collapsed, Nigel. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked tired, but there was something behind his eyes I couldn't quite read. Like he was performing a role he'd rehearsed. Around midnight. I heard a noise from the bathroom and found her on the floor. Called 111 straight away. They said something about internal bleeding. Internal bleeding from what? He shrugged. That shrug. I've replayed it 1,000 times since, and every time it makes my blood go cold. They're not sure yet. Running tests. I wanted to grab him and shake answers out of him, but at that moment a doctor came through the double doors. He was about my age, maybe a year or 2 younger, Pacifica fellow, solidly built, with reading glasses perched on his nose and the kind of face that had seen too many long nights. Family of Charlotte Radcliffe? That's us, Sean said, stepping forward before I could speak. The doctor looked at Sean, then at me, and something shifted in his expression. Something careful. I'm Dr. Tangaroa. Charlotte's stable, but she's still in surgery. We've managed to control the bleeding, but there was significant damage. We're doing everything we can. What caused it? I asked. We're still running tests to determine the exact cause. His voice was measured, professional. Then he looked directly at me. Mr. Beckett, could I have a word with you privately? Just a few questions about Charlotte's medical history. Sean shifted beside me. I'm her husband. I can answer anything you need. Dr. Tangaroa didn't look at him. I need to speak with her father. Family medical history. It won't take long. The air between us thickened. Sean's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fine. I'll be here. I followed the doctor down a corridor and around two corners, away from the waiting area. He didn't say a word until we reached a small consultation room. He closed the door and I heard the lock click. Doctor, what's going on? He turned to face me, and the look in his eyes made everything inside me go still. This wasn't a doctor about to discuss blood types and family allergies. This was a man about to tell me something that would change my life. Mr. Beckett, I need you to listen very carefully. His voice was low, urgent. Your daughter is going to survive this surgery. But you need to collect your grandchildren and leave Christchurch tonight. Right now. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He reached into his coat and pulled out a large brown envelope, thick with papers. He held it out to me with both hands, the way you'd handle something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Your son-in-law has been doing something to your daughter, he said quietly. This envelope contains medical records, prescription histories, and correspondence I've gathered over the past 2 weeks. I could lose my registration for giving this to you. I could face criminal charges. But I cannot in good conscience stand by and let this go on. My hands were trembling as I took it. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. What are you saying? Open it when you're alone. Read all of it. Then get those children and go somewhere safe. His eyes bored into mine. Sean cannot know you have this. If he finds out, I don't know what he'll do. Is Charlotte in danger? Is that why she's here? She's here because of him. That's all I can say right now. He glanced at the door. I need to get back to theater. Please, Mr. Beckett. Protect those kids. He left. I stood in that room alone, holding the envelope against my chest, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. I walked back to the waiting area. My face must have been white as a sheet, but Sean was staring at his phone and barely looked up. What did the doc want? Just family history stuff, I said. My voice sounded far away. And some paperwork. Insurance forms, looks like. Sean glanced at the envelope. His gaze lingered on it for a beat too long. Then he nodded and went back to his phone. I sat down 4 chairs away from him, the envelope on my lap. I couldn't open it here. Not in front of him. The minutes stretched like wire. Sean checked his phone over and over. I watched him from the corner of my eye, trying to see what Dr. Tangaroa had seen. What had I missed? I need the bathroom, I said finally. Sean grunted without looking up. I walked down the corridor, found the men's toilets, and locked myself in a cubicle. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the envelope twice before I got it open. The first page was a medical record with Charlotte's name at the top. I scanned it, and words jumped out at me that didn't belong together. Altered dosages. Prescription anomalies. Contraindicated drug combinations. I turned to the next page. Prescription records from 4 different pharmacies across Canterbury. Medications in Sean's name. Blood thinners. Sedatives. Anti-anxiety pills. Some prescribed by Dr. Charlotte had never visited. Some with signatures that weren't Charlotte's but were supposed to be. The combinations were toxic. I didn't need medical training to understand that mixing high-dose blood thinners with certain sedatives could cause catastrophic internal bleeding. There was a printed email thread between Dr. Tangaroa and a pharmacist in Ashburton. The pharmacist had flagged a prescription as suspicious because it was the fourth time in 2 months someone had tried to fill a high-dose anticoagulant for Charlotte Radcliffe at different locations across the region. Dr. Tangaroa had started digging. He pulled Charlotte's hospital records and found a pattern that made my stomach turn. Charlotte had been to the emergency department 5 times in the past 10 months. Severe dizziness. Unexplained nausea that lasted for days. A fall in the kitchen that left her with a fractured wrist she couldn't explain. Collapsing at a supermarket car park. Each time, Sean had been the one to bring her in. Each time, he'd hovered beside her, answering questions on her behalf when she was too dazed to speak. I thought he was being a devoted husband. Caring. Protective. He'd been covering his tracks. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note from Dr. Tangaroa, scrawled in hurried pen. Mr. Beckett. I discovered this during your daughter's surgical prep. Her blood panel showed dangerous levels of anticoagulants that no doctor in our system prescribed to her. When I cross-referenced with pharmacies across Canterbury and South Canterbury, the pattern became clear. Sean has a $1.5 million life insurance policy on Charlotte, taken out 8 months ago. I have also found a second policy for $2 million, opened just 3 months ago. I've contacted a lawyer I trust, but I need you to act first. Get those children to safety. He will come for them if he suspects you know. $3.5 million. My daughter's life was worth $3.5 million to the man who slept beside her every night. I sat on that toilet lid for what felt like an hour but was probably 3 minutes. The papers were spread across my knees, my vision blurred, my hands numb. Sean had been slowly poisoning Charlotte. 4 months. Maybe longer. Every time she'd felt sick, every time she'd fallen, every time she'd rung me sounding exhausted and confused, he'd been doing it to her. I thought about the past 2 years. How Charlotte had stopped coming around for Sunday roast. How she'd stopped ringing as often. How when I did see her, she looked thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Sean was always there beside her, his hand on her back, speaking for her, gently steering every conversation. I'd told myself he was a good partner. That she was lucky to have someone so attentive. I'd been blind. I shoved the papers back into the envelope and tucked it inside my jacket. I couldn't fall apart now. Charlotte needed me. Millie and Jack needed me. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked every one of my 64 years. Old, frightened, way out of my depth. But I'd rebuilt a house after the earthquakes with nothing but stubbornness and a borrowed toolkit. I could do this. I walked back to the waiting area. Sean looked up. You all right? You were gone a while. Stomach's playing up. The stress, I reckon. I sat down, the envelope pressing against my ribs like a hot coal. Where are the kids? At the house. My cousin Tanya's looking after them. She came over after the ambulance left. Your cousin? In 5 years of marriage to Charlotte, I'd never met anyone called Tanya. I'd met Sean's mom once, at the wedding, and she'd flown back to Melbourne the next day. He'd always said he didn't have much family in New Zealand. Yeah, she's staying with us for a bit. Down from Hamilton. His voice was smooth. Casual. Didn't want to wake the kids. They don't need to see their mum like this. Something about the way he said it made the hair on my arms stand up. I nodded. That's sensible. He went back to his phone. I sat there staring at the wall, my mind working faster than it had in years. I needed to get to Millie and Jack. I needed to get them away from this cousin Tanya, whoever she really was. But if I just left the hospital, Sean would know something was off. I had to be smart about this. An hour crawled by. Then another. Dr. Tangaroa came out once with an update. Charlotte was still in surgery. Stable, but critical. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge the envelope. He was protecting himself, and I understood that. Sean barely reacted. Just a nod, a murmur, back to his phone. At 6 in the morning, a nurse told us Charlotte was out of surgery and in recovery. Unconscious, but stable. We could see her in an hour. I need a coffee, Sean said, stretching as he stood. Want one? No, I'm fine. The moment he disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling again. I rang my sister-in-law, Maureen. She'd been Colleen's sister, my late wife's closest sibling, and she'd stayed close to our family after Colleen passed. She lived in Timaru, about 2 hours south. Nigel? It's 6 in the morning. What's wrong? Maureen, I need you to trust me. I can't explain everything now, but I need you to drive to Christchurch Hospital right now. Bring your car. Don't ask questions. Is it Charlie? Please, Maureen. Just come. A pause. Then, I'm leaving now. Sean came back with his coffee. He sat down and sipped it, his eyes distant, and I watched him. Really watched him. The man who'd stood beside Charlotte at their wedding in Akaroa, who'd held Millie as a newborn, who'd taught Jack to kick a rugby ball in the back garden. The man who'd been feeding my daughter poison. At 7:30, they let us into Charlotte's room. She lay in the hospital bed hooked up to machines, her face gray, her lips cracked. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. So small. So fragile. Sean stood on one side, holding her hand. I stood on the other, watching her chest rise and fall, counting each breath. I'll stay with her, Sean said after a while. You should head home, Nigel. Get some rest. I'm not leaving. He looked at me, and for just a second, something cold moved behind his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful, concerned expression he wore like a mask. Suit yourself. We sat in silence. The machines beeped. Charlotte's breathing was shallow but steady. At 9, my phone buzzed. A text from Maureen. Here. Car park B. I stood. Need to make some calls. Step outside for a bit. Sean didn't look up. Take your time. I walked out, down the corridor, through the main entrance, and across to the car park. Maureen was leaning against her old Holden, arms folded, her face drawn with worry. She'd driven 2 hours in record time. What's going on, Nigel? I pulled the envelope from my jacket and handed it to her. Read it. All of it. She opened it. I watched her face go white, page by page. By the end, her hands were shaking as badly as mine had been. Oh, dear God. I need to get Millie and Jack. They're at Sean's house with some woman he says is his cousin. I've never met her. I don't know if she's involved. You think he'd hurt the children? I don't know what he's capable of anymore. My voice cracked. But I'm not taking that chance. Maureen straightened up and the look on her face was pure steel. She was a tough woman, Maureen. Raised on a farm in South Canterbury, spent 30 years as a primary school teacher. Not the kind of person who panicked. What's the plan? I'll tell Sean I'm going to check on the kids. You follow me to the house. When I come out with them, we go. We don't stop until they're safe. Then I ring the police. And if something goes wrong? Then you ring the police yourself. She nodded. Let's go. I went back inside. Sean was still beside Charlotte's bed, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in. I'm going to pop over to your place and check on the kids, I said. Make sure they're doing all right. They should hear from someone in the family that their mom's going to be okay. Sean's eyes narrowed, just slightly. They're fine. Tanya texted me an hour ago. I know, but I'd like to see them myself. Give them a cuddle. They'll be worried. For a long moment, he just looked at me. I felt exposed, like he could see straight through me to the envelope-shaped truth hidden inside my jacket. But then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Here. In case Tanya doesn't hear the door. She's a heavy sleeper. I took the keys. Thanks. I'll be back in a couple of hours. Tell them Dad loves them. Those words nearly broke me. I nodded and walked out, forcing my legs to move at a normal pace when every part of me wanted to run. I made it to my truck, started the engine, and pulled out. In the mirror, I could see Maureen following at a distance in her Holden. The drive to Sean and Charlotte's place in Housewell took about 20 minutes. It was a nice street, new-built houses with tidy lawns and double garages, the kind of neighborhood where people put up Christmas lights in December and nobody imagined anything dark happening inside. The house was a modern two-story with gray cladding and a red front door. Charlotte had been so excited when they bought it 3 years ago. She'd send me photos of every room, measuring up for curtains, planning where Millie's drawings would go on the fridge. I parked in the driveway. Maureen parked on the street, engine running. I walked to the front door and used Sean's key. The lock clicked open. The house was quiet. No television. No voices. That unsettling silence of a home where something is missing. Hello? I called out. Tanya? Nothing. I moved through the lounge. The kitchen was empty. Dishes in the sink, a half-drunk cup of tea gone cold on the bench. I checked the downstairs toilet. Nobody. Then I heard it. A small voice from upstairs. Millie. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The sound was coming from Millie's room at the end of the hall. I pushed the door open. Millie and Jack were sitting on the floor. Millie was reading a picture book to her little brother, doing the voices the way Charlotte always did. They looked up when I came in, and their faces lit up. Grandpa. Millie jumped up and ran to me. She was 5 years old, all bony elbows and wild brown hair like her mother. Jack followed behind, quieter, clutching a toy fire engine. I crouched down and held them both. The relief hit me so hard I nearly cried right there. Where's Tanya? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Millie shrugged. She left. When? Ages ago. She got a phone call and said she had to go somewhere. She told us to stay in the room and not open the door for anyone. My blood went cold. 2 small children, left alone in a house. The older one not yet 6. Did she say when she'd be back? No. I stood up. Listen to me, both of you. Mummy's in hospital and the doctors are making her better. She's going to be fine. But I need to take you to stay with Auntie Maureen for a little while. Can you grab your favorite things? Just what you really want to bring. They nodded and moved quickly, the way children do when they sense the urgency in an adult's voice. Millie stuffed books and a stuffed kiwi bird into her backpack. Jack grabbed his fire engine and a blanket. While they packed, I went to Charlotte's bedroom. I needed her documents, her passport, anything important. I opened the bedside drawer and found what I was looking for underneath a stack of folded scarves. A small green notebook. Charlotte's handwriting. I flipped it open and my throat closed up. I feel so dizzy all the time now. Sean says it's because I'm not eating enough. Maybe he's right. I fell again today. I was just standing at the kitchen bench and my legs gave out. Sean was so worried. He made me a smoothie and said I need to see the GP. The tablets Sean picks up from the chemist make me feel worse, not better. But he says the doctor knows best and I need to give them time to work. I can't remember things properly. I forgot to pick Millie up from kindy on Tuesday. Sean had to leave work. He wasn't angry, but he looked at me like I was broken. I closed the notebook and put it in my jacket. Evidence. My daughter had been documenting her own slow poisoning without knowing it. Grandpa, we're ready. I met them at the top of the stairs. They each had their backpacks on. Millie was carrying the kiwi bird under one arm. Jack held my hand as we walked down. We were halfway to my truck when another car pulled into the driveway. My heart stopped. Sean. He climbed out, his expression calm, but his eyes scanning everything. Me. The kids. The bags in their hands. Nigel. His voice was slow, deliberate. What's going on? My mind went blank. I hadn't expected him to leave the hospital. Why was he here? Taking the kids to my place for a few days, I said. Tanya's gone. Left them on their own. I figured it'd be better if they stayed with me while Charlie's recovering. She left? Sean pulled out his phone and called a number. It rang and rang. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. That's strange, he said, but his voice was too flat. Too controlled. He looked at the children. Hey guys, why don't you go back inside for a minute? Grandpa and I need to have a quick chat. No, I said. They're coming with me. Something shifted in his face. The mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second, and underneath it I saw something that made my skin crawl. Cold calculation. A man weighing his options. Nigel, I think you and I should have a talk. Man to man. His voice was low now. Quiet. The kids don't need to hear this. There's nothing to talk about. I'm taking the grandkids. Charlie would want them with family. Charlotte's unconscious. She didn't tell you anything. She told me plenty before this happened. Sean took a step toward me. I moved in front of the children. My hand found my phone in my pocket. Maureen was still on the street, watching. If this went wrong, she'd ring the police. At least that was the plan. You don't know what you're doing, Sean said quietly. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner. His face went blank. We stood there for what felt like a full minute but was probably 5 seconds. Then Millie's small voice broke the silence. Grandpa, I don't like this. That snapped me out of it. Get in the truck. Both of you. Right now. They didn't argue. They ran to the truck and I helped them into the back seat. I got behind the wheel and started the engine. Sean walked up to my window. I didn't lower it. He said something. I couldn't hear it through the glass, but I could read his lips. This isn't over. I reversed out and drove. In the rearview mirror, Sean stood motionless in the driveway, watching us go. Hands in his pockets. Still as stone. Maureen followed. We didn't stop until we were south of Ralston, pulled over at a petrol station. I got out and went to her window. He turned up, I said. I don't know how he knew. Did he try to stop you? Not physically. But he knows something's wrong. We need to move fast. My place in Timaru? For now. But first, I need to ring the police. I looked back at the truck. Millie and Jack were watching me through the window, their faces small and serious. Scared, but safe. I was going to keep it that way. We drove to Timaru. Maureen's house was a tidy weatherboard cottage on a quiet street near Caroline Bay. She got the kids inside, made them Milo and toast, put a DVD on. Normal things. Safe things. I sat in her kitchen and dialed 111. 111, what is your emergency? I need to report an attempted murder. The words came out clearer than I expected. My son-in-law has been poisoning my daughter. I have evidence. The operator paused. Can you tell me your location? I gave them Maureen's address. Within 40 minutes, 2 officers arrived. One was a young constable, tall and merry, with careful eyes. The other was a senior sergeant, a woman in her 50s with cropped gray hair and the look of someone who'd spent decades sorting other people's worst days. I sat with them at Maureen's kitchen table while Millie and Jack watched cartoons in the lounge, blissfully unaware of what was unfolding. Start from the beginning, the senior sergeant said. I told them everything. The phone call. The hospital. Dr. Tangaroa. The envelope. The prescriptions. The forged signatures. The life insurance policies. Charlotte's journal. By the time I finished, both officers were quiet. "Do you have the documents?" the sergeant asked. I handed over the envelope and the green notebook. She went through them carefully, the young constable reading over her shoulder. "If these are verified," she said finally, "we're looking at attempted murder, fraud, forgery. Potentially more. They're real." Dr. Tangaroa risked everything to give them to me. "We'll need to speak with him. And we'll need to obtain official copies through proper channels. Warrants, the whole process." She looked at me, and her expression softened just slightly. "You did the right thing, Mr. Beckett. But I need you to understand, this is going to be a long road. Investigation, evidence gathering, building a case for the Crown prosecutor. It takes time. My daughter doesn't have time. He tried to kill her once. What stops him from trying again? We'll arrange protection at the hospital. Nobody gets near her without our say-so." She paused. "In the meantime, stay here. Don't contact Sean. Don't go back to Christchurch. We'll handle this." They left with the documents and a promise to keep me updated. I watched them drive away and felt a door closing behind me. There was no going back now. Maureen sat beside me on her front steps. "You all right?" "No." I put my face in my hands. I keep thinking about how long this has been going on. All those times Charlie rang me sounding confused, sounding tired. All those trips to the hospital. I told myself Sean was looking after her. You couldn't have known. I'm her father. I should have seen it. Maureen put her hand on my arm. "You're seeing it now. That's what counts." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on Maureen's spare bed staring at the ceiling, checking my phone every 20 minutes. At 3 in the morning, it rang. Detective Sergeant Karen Ogilvy, the senior officer from earlier. "Mr. Beckett, we brought Sean in for questioning this evening." He lawyered up immediately. Refused to say a word. "But we obtained a warrant to search the house and his vehicle." "What did you find?" "More prescriptions. Multiple forms of identification he'd been using to fill them at pharmacies across Canterbury and Otago. And we found something else." My stomach dropped. "What?" "A second life insurance policy on Charlotte. $2 million, taken out 3 months ago. Combined with the $1.5 million policy from 8 months ago, that's $3.5 million total. $3.5 million. That was the price he'd put on my daughter's life." "There's more," the detective continued. "We've run background checks on Sean Radcliffe. His real name is Sean Robert Radcliffe, born in Palmerston North. He's been married twice before." I felt the room tilt. What happened to them? His first wife died 9 years ago in Napier. House fire. Ruled accidental at the time. His second wife died 6 years ago in Tauranga. Fell from a balcony. Also ruled accidental. He killed them. We're reopening both cases. If we can establish a pattern, it strengthens everything." She paused. "But his lawyer is already pushing back. Claiming you have a grudge against Sean, that you've never accepted him, that you coerced a doctor into fabricating evidence. He's going to try to paint you as a bitter father-in-law. Let him try. I have the truth. I know. And we're building a solid case. But in the meantime, stay put. Stay safe." She hung up. I sat in the dark, thinking about those 2 other women. 2 other wives. 2 other families who'd lost someone and never known why. How many people had Sean Radcliffe destroyed? In the morning, I rang Christchurch Hospital. They put me through to Charlotte's ward. A nurse answered. "Is my daughter awake?" "She's drifting in and out. Still very weak. Would you like to speak with her?" There was rustling, then a voice so faint it barely registered. Dad? I closed my eyes. Charlie. How are you feeling? Terrible. Everything hurts. A pause. Where are Millie and Jack? Sean said you took them. They're safe, love. They're with me and Auntie Maureen in Timaru. Why? Her voice was confused, slow. The medication still fogging her brain. What's going on? How do you tell your daughter that the man she chose to build a life with has been trying to kill her? How do you say those words? Charlie, I need you to listen to me. You're not safe around Sean. What? He's been making you sick. The doctors found evidence. He's been giving you things, medications, that have been causing all your symptoms. The dizziness, the falls, the bleeding. Silence. Then, no. That's ridiculous. Sean loves me. Honey, I know this is hard to hear. You've never liked him. Her voice was harder now, defensive. From the day I introduced you, you thought he wasn't good enough. You're doing this to break us up. Charlotte, please. I have proof. Medical records, prescriptions in his name. Stop it, Dad. Just stop. She was crying. I don't want to hear this. I want my husband. I want my children. I want to go home. Charlie. The line went dead. I sat holding the phone for a long time after that. Maureen found me at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. She doesn't believe me, I said. She thinks I'm trying to destroy her marriage. Maureen sighed and sat down across from me. She's been manipulated, Nigel. For years. That kind of control doesn't break overnight. She needs time. What if she goes back to him? What if she won't listen? She will. When the shock wears off and the evidence comes out, she'll see it. I wanted to believe that. But I'd heard the desperation in Charlotte's voice, the need to hold on to the life she thought was real. Sean hadn't just poisoned her body. He'd poisoned her mind, too. He'd made her doubt herself so thoroughly that when the truth came from someone she loved, she couldn't accept it. 3 days later, Detective Ogilvy rang. We formally arrested Sean Radcliffe. Charges are attempted murder, fraud, and forgery. Bail's been set at $500,000. Will he make bail? His lawyer's trying. But even if he does, there's a protection order in place. He cannot contact Charlotte or the children. I knew protection orders were just paper. If Sean wanted to find us, paper wouldn't stop him. That night, I lay awake listening to Millie talking in her sleep in the next room. She was calling for her mother. Jack had started wetting the bed. These were the invisible wounds Sean had inflicted. Not just on Charlotte, but on everyone who loved her. 2 weeks later, Charlotte was discharged from hospital. She went to a recovery facility in Christchurch. Physical therapy, counseling, the slow work of putting a broken body and a broken mind back together. She still wasn't speaking to me. Every time I rang, she either didn't pick up or ended the call within 30 seconds. I drove up to see her anyway. Didn't ring ahead. Just showed up at the facility and asked the reception staff to let me in. She's requested no visitors, the woman said. I'm her father. 5 minutes. Please. The woman hesitated, then relented. Room 14. But if she asks you to leave, you leave. I found her room at the end of a corridor. The door was ajar. I knocked. Go away. It's me, love. Silence. I said go away, Dad. I pushed the door open. Charlotte was sitting in a chair by the window, wrapped in an oversized cardigan. She'd lost weight. Her cheekbones jutted out and her eyes were hollow. She didn't look at me. We need to talk, Charlie. No, we don't. You took my children. You had my husband arrested. You've torn my whole life apart. Sean tore your life apart. I'm trying to help you pick up the pieces. She turned to face me then, and the fury in her eyes nearly knocked me back a step. You have never respected my choices. Not when I dropped out of uni. Not when I moved in with Sean. Not when we got married. You've always thought you knew better. I wanted to argue, but she was partly right. I had been skeptical of Sean from the start. Too charming, too polished, too good to be true. But I'd swallowed my doubts because Charlotte was happy, or seemed to be. Even if that's true, I said slowly, it doesn't change what he's done to you. He hasn't done anything. Charlie, the police found prescriptions. They found forged signatures. They found $3.5 million in life insurance policies on your life that you didn't know about. She flinched at that. Just a flicker, but I saw it. They also found that Sean was married twice before. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was hammering. His first wife died in a house fire in Napier. His second wife fell from a balcony in Tauranga. Both ruled accidental at the time. Both cases have been reopened. Charlotte's face went pale. That's not true. It is. The police verified it. He told me he'd never been married before. I know. She sat down slowly, like her legs couldn't hold her. But we had a life. We had a home. The kids. I pulled out my phone and opened a file Detective Ogilvy had sent me. Text messages between Sean and an old mate from Palmerston North. I held it out. Read this. Please. She stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. Then she took it. I watched her eyes move across the screen. Sean's words, casual and calculating. Talking about the timeline. About how much longer it would take. About the payout. About starting fresh afterward. Discussing Charlotte the way you'd discuss a business deal. The phone slipped from her fingers onto the table. She stumbled backward and I reached for her, but she pushed me away. Get out. Charlie. Get out, Dad. I need to think. I can't do this with you standing there. I picked up the phone. At the door, I stopped. I love you, Charlotte. Everything I've done is because I love you. When you're ready, I'll be here. She didn't answer. She just stood at the window, shaking. I drove back to Timaru with a stone in my chest. That night, at 11:15, my phone rang. Dad. Charlotte's voice was small, wrecked, like something inside her had finally broken open. I need to see everything. The medical records, the prescriptions, the journal, all of it. Can you bring it tomorrow? I'll be there first thing. Dad? Yeah? I'm sorry. For what I said. For not believing you. You don't need to apologize, love. Not ever. The next morning, I was at the facility by 8 with copies of everything the police had cleared me to share. Charlotte was waiting, red-eyed, wrapped in a blanket. She hadn't slept either. She read through every page. It took over an hour. I sat beside her in silence, watching the truth reshape her face. When she looked up, tears were pouring down her cheeks. He was killing me. Yes. For money. Yes. She covered her face and cried. Not the angry tears from before. Deep, broken sobs that came from a place I couldn't reach. I moved closer and put my arm around her. This time she didn't push me away. She leaned into me and cried until she had nothing left. I thought I was losing my mind, she whispered. Every time I felt sick, every time I couldn't remember something, he'd look at me with this worried face and tell me I needed to rest. And I believed him. I believed everything he said. He's a manipulator, Charlie. He did this to other women before you. You couldn't have known. The children. Her eyes widened with sudden terror. Millie and Jack. Did he ever? No. The police found nothing to suggest he harmed them. They were leverage. A way to keep you tied to him. The relief that washed over her face was followed immediately by rage. I want to testify. When this goes to trial, I want to stand up in front of everyone and tell them what he did. Are you sure? It'll be hard. I'm sure. He took my health. He took my confidence. He took 2 years of my children's lives that I'll never get back because I was too sick and too confused to be the mother they deserved. He's not taking my voice as well. The trial was held at the Christchurch District Court 4 months later. The courtroom was full. Sean sat at the defense table in a suit, clean-shaven, looking like any decent Kiwi bloke wrongly accused. But the evidence told a different story. The Crown prosecutor built the case piece by piece. The prescriptions. The forged signatures. The pharmacy records stretching across 4 regions. The insurance policy Charlotte never knew existed. The text messages. Dr. Tangaroa testified, calmly and clearly, about how he discovered the pattern during Charlotte's surgical preparation. Sean's lawyer tried to argue that the doctor had breached medical privacy laws, but the judge ruled the evidence admissible given the immediate threat to life. Then Charlotte took the stand. She walked slowly. She was still recovering, still thin, still carrying the physical toll of what had been done to her. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. She told the jury about the 2 years of illness. The constant nausea. The dizziness that came out of nowhere. The falls she couldn't explain. The way Sean would bring her tablets and smoothies and tell her the doctor said she needed them. The way he'd slowly cut her off from friends, from family, from me. The way he'd made her doubt her own mind. I thought he was the only person in the world who cared about me, she said, looking at Sean for the first and only time. But he was the one destroying me. Slowly, carefully, so that when I finally died, everyone would think it was just bad luck. Just another tragedy. Sean's expression didn't change. Not a flicker of remorse. Just that blank, calculating stare. The families of his previous wives testified too. His first wife's sister, a woman named Rachel, who'd spent 8 years telling anyone who would listen that the house fire wasn't an accident. His second wife's mother, who'd kept a diary of her daughter's mysterious illnesses in the months before she died. Falls. Nausea. Confusion. The same pattern. Exactly the same. The jury deliberated for 1 day. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder. 2 counts of murder. Fraud. Forgery. Sean was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 22 years. As they let him out, he looked at me across the courtroom. No anger. No sadness. Nothing. Just empty eyes and a face that had never been real. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the kitchen of Charlotte's new flat in Addington, watching her cook dinner. It was a small place, a 2-bedroom unit with a tiny courtyard, nothing flash. But it was hers. Safe, clean, and free. Millie was at the table doing her homework, chattering about her teacher and a project about native birds. Jack was on the floor building something elaborate with blocks and making explosion noises. Charlotte turned from the stove and caught me watching. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. The first real smile I'd seen from her in what felt like years. You all right, Dad? Yeah. Just taking it in. She wiped her hands and came over to hug me. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You got yourself here, love. I just opened the door. She pulled back and shook her head. No. You did more than that. You believed something was wrong when everyone, including me, was telling you it wasn't. You fought for us when I was too broken to fight for myself. I thought about that night in the hospital. Dr. Tangaroa handing me the envelope. How close I've come to ignoring it, to telling myself I was overreacting, to driving home and going back to sleep. I almost didn't do it, I admitted. When I first read those papers in the hospital toilet, part of me wanted to put them back in the envelope and pretend I'd never seen them. Because if they were true, it meant everything I thought I knew about my daughter's life was a lie. But you didn't pretend. No. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd known something was wrong for a long time. I just hadn't been brave enough to face it. Charlotte squeezed my hand. We're facing it now. That's what matters. The oven timer beeped and she went back to pull out a lasagna. The smell filled the flat, warm and ordinary and perfect. After dinner, while Charlotte put the kids to bed, I stepped out onto the small courtyard. The Christchurch evening was cool and clear, the Port Hills dark against a sky full of stars. My phone buzzed. A text from Maureen. How's dinner? Good. Really good. Tell Charlie I'm proud of her. And tell yourself the same thing. I looked at those words for a long time. For months, I'd been carrying guilt like a stone in my chest. Guilt for not seeing what Sean was doing. Guilt for the years Charlotte suffered. Guilt for every phone call where I'd heard the exhaustion in her voice and told myself she was fine. But maybe being a good father wasn't about getting it right every time. Maybe it was about what you did when you finally saw the truth. Whether you turned away or stepped forward. Whether you chose comfort or courage. Charlotte came outside with 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one and leaned against the railing. Millie asked me today why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, she said. What did you tell her? The truth. As much as a 5-year-old can understand. That Daddy did some very bad things and that he has to stay somewhere where he can't hurt anyone else. That it wasn't her fault. That it wasn't anyone's fault except his. How did she take it? She cried for a bit. Then she asked if she could have a cat. I almost laughed. Almost. And? I said we'd think about it. Charlotte looked out at the sky. I got offered a job, by the way. Yeah? With a women's refuge in Carton. They want me to help with their outreach program. Talking to other women going through what I went through. Helping them see the signs. That's wonderful, Charlie. It doesn't pay much. $42,000 a year. But it's enough. I can look after the kids. I don't need to depend on anyone. That number meant more than money. It meant freedom. It meant a woman who'd been broken down to nothing building herself back up on her own terms. I got something in the post yesterday, she said after a while. From Sean. His lawyer forwarded it. My whole body went rigid. What is it? A letter. I haven't opened it. Are you going to? She shook her head slowly. I thought about it. Wondered if maybe there'd be some explanation, some apology that would make it all make sense. But I don't need that. I don't need anything from him. Not his words, not his reasons, not his version of why. What are you going to do with it? Burn it. She looked at me with steady eyes. Tomorrow evening. I want the kids there. I want them to see that some things don't deserve space in your life. That letting go is a weakness. It's the strongest thing you can do. The next evening, we gathered in the courtyard. Charlotte had bought a small fire bowl from Mitre 10. Jack helped arrange kindling while Millie placed stones around the edge in a careful circle. Charlotte held the sealed letter in her hands. She looked at the children. Sometimes, she said, people give us things that are meant to hurt us. Letters, words, promises that were never real. And we think we have to keep them, because throwing them away feels wrong. But some things are meant to be let go of. Some things only have power over you as long as you hold on to them. She struck a match, touched it to the corner of the envelope, and dropped it into the fire bowl. We watched it burn. The paper curled and blackened. The words inside, whatever they were, turned to ash. Jack watched with wide eyes. Millie reached for her mother's hand. Are we safe now, Mum? Charlotte knelt down and pulled both children into her arms. Yes, sweetheart. We're safe. I drove home that night along the motorway, the Canterbury Plains stretching out dark and flat on either side, the Southern Alps just a faint line against the sky. I thought about Dr. Tangaroa, who'd risked his career to do the right thing. About Maureen, who'd driven 2 hours at 6 in the morning on nothing but trust. About Detective Ogilvy, who'd believed me when I showed up at her station sounding like a madman. About the families of Sean's first 2 wives, who'd finally have answers after years of not knowing. And I thought about Charlotte. My girl. Who'd been taken apart piece by a man she loved, and who'd found the courage to put herself back together again. My phone buzzed. A photo from Charlotte. Her and the kids on the couch, Millie making a face, Jack holding up a toy dinosaur he'd found somewhere. Below it, 3 words. Thanks, Dad. Always. I pulled over and looked at that photo for a long time. Then I typed back, love you 3. Always and forever. If you've listened to this story and something in it felt familiar, if someone in your life is always tired, always dizzy, always having accidents they can't explain, if someone you love has pulled away from family and you don't know why, please don't do what I did. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself it's nothing. Don't assume someone else will notice. Trust your instincts. Ask the hard questions. And if something feels wrong, it probably is. In New Zealand, you can ring 111 in an emergency, or contact Women's Refuge on 0800 733 843. You can also ring the Family Violence Information Line on 0800 456 450. These services are free, confidential, and available around the clock. No one should have to face this alone, and no one should ever have to wonder, years later, whether they could have done something sooner. Because you can. And the time to do it is now.